Well, hello there, young one. Come, sit down here on the porch with me. Do not mind the creaking of this old rocking chair. It has been with me longer than most people have been in my life. My name is Harold Whitman, but folks around here just call me Harry. I am 73 years old now, been retired from the railroad for going on 15 years. You know, at my age, you accumulate stories like dust on old furniture. Some you forget, some you wish you could forget, and some stick with you whether you want them to or not. You remind me a bit of myself when I was your age, curious, full of questions about life. That is good. That is how we learn. And speaking of learning, I have got a story that taught me more about human nature than any book or sermon ever could. It is about a woman named Catherine, and how she changed my life in ways I never saw coming. Pour yourself some of that lemonade there, and I will tell you a tale that still keeps me up some nights, even after all these years. It was 1968, and I was 24 years old, working as a brakeman for the Missouri Pacific Railroad. Those were different times, you understand. The world was changing fast. There was all that business with the war in Vietnam, protests in the streets, music getting wilder by the day. But in our small town of Millerville, Missouri, things moved at their own pace, like they always had. I was living in a boarding house on Elm Street, saving up every penny I could to buy my own place someday. The work was hard. 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer, crawling over freight cars in all kinds of weather. But it was honest work, and it paid decent for a young man with no family to speak of. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 19, and I had been on my own ever since. That is when Catherine walked into Murphy's Five and Dime, where I was buying work gloves one Saturday afternoon in April. Lord, she was something to behold. Auburn hair that caught the light like burnished copper, green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a smile that could make a man forget his own name. She was looking at fabric patterns, holding up different swatches to the light streaming through the storefront window. "Excuse me," she said, turning to me with that smile, "but you look like a man who might know about practical things. Do you think this blue would be too bold for kitchen curtains?" Now, I did not know the first thing about curtains or decorating, but I found myself saying, "That is a real nice color, miss. Would brighten up any kitchen, I would imagine." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes on a summer evening. "I am Catherine Morrison. I just moved here from St. Louis to teach at the elementary school." "Harry Whitman," I replied, suddenly very aware that my hands were rough and stained from work. "I work for the railroad." We talked for maybe 10 minutes about nothing important. The weather, how she was settling in, what she thought of our little town. But something sparked between us, you know, like when you strike a match in a dark room and suddenly everything is illuminated. I asked if I could take her to dinner sometime, half expecting her to politely decline. Instead, she said yes, and we arranged to meet at Rosie's Diner the following Friday evening. That dinner turned into regular dates. Catherine was unlike any woman I had ever known. She was educated, well-traveled, sophisticated in ways that made me feel like a country bumpkin sometimes. She had lived in Chicago, Kansas City, even spent a summer in Europe with her college roommate, but she never made me feel small about my simple life. Instead, she seemed genuinely interested in my work, my dreams of owning a house with a big yard, maybe starting a family someday. We would take long walks along Miller's Creek, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about the books she was reading, the places she wanted to see. I told her about my plans to maybe work my way up to engineer someday, how I was saving money, how I had found a little house on the outskirts of town that might come up for sale. By July, I was head over heels in love. I had never felt anything like it. This all-consuming need to be near someone, to make them happy, to build a life together. Catherine seemed to feel the same way. She would pack picnic lunches for us on my days off, and we would drive out to the old swimming hole, or just sit on her front porch swing, planning our future. "I want to see the world with you, Harry," she would say, her head on my shoulder as we watched the sunset. "But I also want to come home to you every night." I was working extra shifts, saving every dollar for an engagement ring. Old Mrs. Kowalski at the jewelry shop had shown me a beautiful solitaire that would take me 4 months to pay off. But Catherine was worth it. I was planning to propose on her birthday in September. Then came the first sign that something was not right. It was a Tuesday evening in late August. I had gotten off work early and decided to surprise Catherine with a visit. She had mentioned she was feeling under the weather, so I stopped by the pharmacy and picked up some aspirin and throat lozenges. Her boarding house was on the other side of town, a respectable place run by Mrs. Henley, who was strict about gentlemen callers. I knocked on the front door, but Mrs. Henley said Catherine had gone out around 6 o'clock. That was odd. She had told me just that morning that she was planning to stay in and rest. But people changed their minds, I reasoned. Maybe she was feeling better. I walked back toward downtown, thinking I might find her at the library or maybe having a soda at the fountain. That is when I saw her through the window of the Riverside Hotel's restaurant. She was sitting at a corner table with a man I had never seen before, tall, well-dressed, with silver at his temples. They were leaning in close, talking intimately, and she was laughing that same beautiful laugh I thought was reserved for me. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching them through the window like some kind of fool. The man reached across the table and took her hand. She did not pull away. I must have stood there for 10 minutes trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe it was her brother or a family friend or someone from her past who had come to visit. There had to be an innocent explanation. But then the man signaled for the check, and they stood up together. As they walked toward the restaurant exit, he put his hand on the small of her back. The same intimate gesture I used when we walked together. They came out onto the sidewalk, not 20 feet from where I was standing, but they were so absorbed in each other that they did not notice me. "My room is just upstairs," I heard the man say in a smooth, confident voice. Catherine looked around nervously, then nodded. "Just for a little while, James. I cannot stay long." James. She had never mentioned anyone named James. I watched them go back into the hotel and disappear up the stairs. I stood there until nearly midnight, but she never came back down. At least, not while I was watching. The next day, I could barely concentrate on work. Every time a train whistle blew, every time I had to jump between cars, my mind was elsewhere. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. Catherine loved me. We were planning a future together. There had to be some misunderstanding. That evening she called me at the boarding house, bright and cheerful as always. "Harry, darling, I am feeling so much better today. Would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow? I will make that pot roast you like so much." I wanted to confront her, to ask about the man at the hotel, but something held me back. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe it was hope that I had been mistaken about what I had seen. "That sounds wonderful, Catherine. How are you feeling? You looked pretty sick yesterday." There was the briefest pause. "Oh, much better. I just needed to rest. Mrs. Henley made me some of her chicken soup and I went to bed early." She was lying. I knew it, and she probably knew that I knew it, but we both pretended everything was normal. The next evening I went to her place for dinner. She had made my favorite meal, set the table with her good china, even picked wildflowers for a centerpiece. She looked beautiful in a blue dress I had never seen before. Probably bought with money from her teaching salary, though something about it looked expensive. We made small talk during dinner, but I could sense a tension between us that had never been there before. She seemed distracted, checking the clock on the mantelpiece several times. "Catherine," I finally said, setting down my fork, "is everything all right?" You seem different somehow." She looked at me with those green eyes, and for a moment I thought she was going to tell me the truth. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I am fine, Harry. Just tired from the new school year starting soon. You know how it is?" But I did not know how it was. I had never taught school, never had to prepare lessons or worry about a classroom full of children. It was just another reminder of how different our worlds were. After dinner, we sat on the porch, swing as usual, but something had changed. She was there with me physically, but her mind seemed miles away. When I kissed her goodnight, she turned her head slightly, so my lips caught her cheek instead of her mouth. "I should get some rest," she said. "Long day tomorrow." Walking home that night, I made a decision. I had to know the truth, whatever it cost me. The next day was Friday, and I told my supervisor I was not feeling well and needed to leave early. Instead of going home, I positioned myself across the street from the school where Catherine taught. At 3:30, I watched her say goodbye to the other teachers and walk toward downtown. But instead of heading home, she went straight to the Riverside Hotel. I waited. Sure enough, at 4:15, the same well-dressed man from Tuesday night emerged from a black Cadillac and went into the hotel. My hands were shaking as I crossed the street and entered the lobby. The desk clerk was reading a newspaper and barely looked up when I approached. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but could you tell me if Mr. James, I realized I did not know his last name. "You mean Mr. Morrison," the clerk said without looking up. "He is in room 237, but he asked not to be disturbed. Morrison, the same last name as Catherine." The pieces suddenly fell into place with a clarity that made me sick to my stomach. Catherine Morrison was not a single school teacher who had moved to our town for a fresh start. She was a married woman having an affair with me. I walked out of that hotel in a daze. Everything I thought I knew about Catherine, about us, about our future together, crumbled like a house of cards. The woman I had fallen in love with, the woman I had been planning to marry, did not exist. She was someone else's wife, and I was just what? A distraction, a bit of excitement in her otherwise proper married life. I went home to my boarding house room and sat on the narrow bed, staring at the wall. The engagement ring I had been saving for was in a small box in my dresser drawer. I took it out and held it up to the light, watching it sparkle like the tears I was too proud to shed. But here is where the story takes another turn, young one, because just when you think you understand people, they surprise you. The next morning there was a knock at my door. It was Catherine, looking pale and drawn, her usually perfect hair disheveled. "Harry, we need to talk," she said. I let her in, though every instinct told me to slam the door in her face. She sat on the single chair in my room, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. "I know you saw me," she said quietly. "At the hotel. With James." "Your husband," I said. It was not a question. She nodded, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. "Yes, my husband. So everything between us has been a lie." "No," she said, looking up at me with desperate eyes. "That is just it, Harry. What we have, it is the only real thing in my life." Then she told me a story that turned everything upside down again. Catherine had married James Morrison when she was 19, fresh out of teacher's college. He was 15 years older, wealthy, prominent in St. Louis society. It had been an arranged marriage, essentially. Her parents had debts, and James needed a respectable young wife to help his political ambitions. "I never loved him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not for a single day. He is cold, controlling, and he hurts me sometimes, Harry. Not where it shows, of course. He is too smart for that." She told me how she had begged James to let her take the teaching position in Millerville, telling him it would be good for his image to have a wife who worked with children. What she did not tell him was that she was planning to disappear, to start a new life somewhere he would never find her. "But then I met you," she said, "and for the first time in my life I knew what it felt like to be truly happy. You made me want to be brave enough to leave him completely. Then why have not you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because he found me. James always finds me. I tried to leave him once before, when we had been married 2 years. I got as far as Denver before his private investigator tracked me down. He made it very clear what would happen if I ever tried to leave again. The man I had seen her with was not a lover," she explained. "He was her husband, who had discovered her whereabouts and come to drag her back to St. Louis. The intimate conversation I had witnessed was him threatening her, telling her she had exactly 1 week to finish her little adventure and come home, or he would make sure she never taught school anywhere again. He has connections everywhere, Harry. Judges, police, school superintendents. He could destroy my career with a phone call. And he would. He has done it before to people who have crossed him." I sat down heavily on the bed, trying to process everything she had told me. "So what happens now?" "I do not know," she whispered. "I have to go back to him. I do not have a choice." "There is always a choice, Catherine," she laughed bitterly. "Is there? With what money would I run? Where would I go that he could not find me? And what about you? Do you think he would just let you walk away, knowing about us? James Morrison destroys people who threaten what he considers his property. And in his mind, I am his property." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our impossible situation settling between us like a stone. Finally, I said, "What if we ran away together? Right now. Today. I have got some money saved, and I know people in other states who could help us disappear." Hope flickered in her eyes for just a moment, then died. "He would find us, Harry. And when he did," she shuddered. "You do not know what kind of man James is, what he is capable of. But I was young and in love, and thought love could conquer anything. Then we will make sure he does not find us. We will go somewhere far away, change our names, start completely over." For a moment I thought she might say yes, but then she shook her head. "I cannot ask you to give up your whole life for me. Your job, your friends, your future here. It would not be fair. That is my choice to make." She looked at me with such sadness that it broke my heart. "Oh, Harry, you sweet, wonderful man. You have no idea what you would be getting into." She stood up to leave, then turned back. "I want you to know that these past few months have been the happiest of my life. When I am with you, I remember who I used to be before James took that away from me. I will never forget that." She kissed me then, soft and desperate, like she was trying to memorize the feel of my lips. Then she was gone. I did not see her for 3 days. When I finally could not stand it anymore, I went to Mrs. Henley's boarding house to check on her. "Oh, Mr. Whitman," Mrs. Henley said, her face sad. "I am sorry to tell you, but Miss Morrison, or rather, Mrs. Morrison, as it turns out, checked out yesterday morning. Her husband came to collect her. Seemed like a nice enough gentleman, very well dressed, but she did not look happy to see him. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Did she leave any message for me?" Mrs. Henley handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Catherine's careful script. I walked to Miller's Creek, our special place, before opening it. The letter was short. "Dearest Harry, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Please do not try to find me or contact me. It would only make things worse for both of us. I need you to know that every word I said to you was true. I do love you, more than I have ever loved anyone or anything. You showed me what happiness feels like, and I will carry that with me always. Live your life, Harry. Find a good woman who can love you the way you deserve to be loved. Have the family you dream of, buy that house with the big yard, and be happy. That is all I want for you. Please do not remember me with sadness. Remember the good times we had, and know that you gave me the greatest gift anyone ever has. You made me feel alive. All my love always, Catherine P.S. There is something hidden under the loose floorboard in your room. I wanted you to have it. I ran back to the boarding house and pulled up the loose board near my window. There was a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was the engagement ring I had been saving for, along with a note. I saw you looking at this at Mrs. Kowalski's shop. I wanted to buy it for myself so I could pretend, just for a little while, that we really could have had forever together. But you should have your money back to build the life you deserve. See, she had somehow managed to pay for the ring and leave it for me. Even in leaving, she was trying to take care of me. I kept that ring for 2 years, carrying it in my pocket like a talisman. Part of me kept hoping she would find a way to come back, that we would get our second chance. But she never did. In 1970, I met your grandmother, Eleanor, at a church social. She was nothing like Catherine. Practical where Catherine was dreamy, steady where Catherine was passionate, content with simple pleasures where Catherine yearned for adventure. But Eleanor was kind and honest, and she loved me without reservation or complication. I married Eleanor with Catherine's engagement ring after having it reset and properly blessed. We had 43 good years together before the cancer took her. Eleanor knew about Catherine. I told her the whole story early in our courtship. She said she was grateful to Catherine for teaching me how to love completely, even if it ended in heartbreak. A heart that has never been broken, Eleanor used to say, does not know how precious love really is. We never heard from Catherine again. But about 15 years ago, I got a letter from a lawyer in St. Louis. Catherine had died, and she had left me something in her will. It was a small wooden box containing all the letters I had written to her during those brief months we were together. Letters I had never sent, because I did not know where to send them after she left. There was also a final letter from her, written apparently just before she died. My dear Harry, if you are reading this, then I have finally found peace. I stayed with James until he died in 1987, but after that I never remarried. I spent my later years teaching at a small school in Oregon, living quietly, but living freely for the first time since I was 19. I want you to know that I followed your life from afar. I know you married Eleanor and had 3 children and became a grandfather. I am so happy you found the love and family you deserved. Our time together was brief, but it changed everything for me. You gave me the courage to survive my marriage and the hope to build a new life afterward. That was your gift to me. Not just love, but the belief that I was worthy of love. I hope you can forgive an old woman for keeping track of you all these years. You were my first real love and in many ways my last. Some people are lucky enough to find one great love in their lifetime. We were lucky enough to be each other's. I am not sad to be leaving this world, Harry. I have had a good life, especially the parts of it that you were in. All my love until we meet again, Catherine. She had never stopped loving me, just as I had never completely stopped loving her. Even now, sitting here on this porch with you, I can close my eyes and see her face as clearly as if she were sitting right there in that chair. Now, you might be wondering why I am telling you this story, what lesson an old man's heartbreak might hold for someone your age. Here is what I learned from Catherine Morrison. Love is not always enough. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone go, even when every fiber of your being wants to hold on. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the memory of being truly, completely loved, even if it is only for a brief moment in time. Catherine and I could not have our happy ending, but that does not mean our love was a failure. It prepared me to love Eleanor properly, completely, without holding back. And it taught me that every love story, even the ones that end in heartbreak, has value if it makes you more human, more compassionate, more capable of loving others. Eleanor and I had our children, grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren because I learned from Catherine how to love without reservation. The love I could not give to Catherine, I gave to Eleanor and our family. Nothing is ever really wasted if you learn from it. The old man falls silent, rocking gently in his chair as the sun sets behind the maple trees. You can see in his eyes that he is seeing faces from long ago, reliving moments that shaped the man he became. After a while, he looks at you and smiles. So, there you have it, young one. The story of Catherine Morrison and how she changed my life by breaking my heart. Funny how the people who hurt us the most sometimes teach us the most about what it means to be human. He reaches over and pats your hand. Now, is there anything else this old fool can tell you about love, loss, or life in general? I have got all evening and nowhere else to be.